when travellers influenced by Romanticism often expressed a sense of charm at the quaintly exotic world that greeted them when they crossed the Pyrenees. "What a country is Spain for a traveller!" exclaimed Washington Irving, "where the most miserable inn is as full of adventure as an enchanted castle, and every meal is in itself an achievement." Something of the same spirit survived as late as 1949, when the travel writer Patrick Leigh Fermor jumped at the suggestion that he should contribute to a new series on travellers and explorers. In a letter to Edward Shackleton, the son of the Antarctic explorer, Fermor proposed a biography of Cortés's impetuous companion Pedro de Alvarado, framing his proposed subject in terms that sharply evoke William Prescott. "The story is so exciting," wrote Fermor, "that it would be impossible to turn it into a bore. Indeed, it's got a wonderful dramatic completeness about it, one must admit." Very little of this uncritically admiring enthusiasm survives nowadays, and that is all to the good. Our own perception of the Conquistadores, however, has become entangled with a strangely persistent myth, one that sees in the history of Spain little but a record of cruelty at the service of political reaction and religious bigotry. The origins of this myth are to be found in the various reactions provoked by the meteoric rise of the Spanish Habsburgs in the 16th century. Since the phenomenon coincided with the rapid spread of print, it is no surprise that the Spanish Habsburgs became the first victims of the propagandists. The trend reached a high point in 1581 with the publication of The Apology of William the Silent, Prince of Orange, a skillful diatribe in which the leader of the anti-Spanish Dutch revolt sought to rally support for his cause with a damning depiction of everything Spanish. His particular bête noire was Charles V's son and heir, Philip II, whose crimes were alleged to range from duplicity and adultery to incest and the murder of his wife and son. And, of course, the conquistadores were always at the centre of these allegations. William himself took good care to plunder the damning accounts of the atrocities of the conquistadores that the Spanish defenders of the Indians had been tirelessly producing, with the specific aim of shocking the Castilian authorities into implementing reform. Foremost among them was Bartolomé de las Casas' sensationalist polemic, A Most Brief Account of the Destruction of the Indies, destined to capture the European imagination for centuries to come, not least through the visual aid afforded it in vivid engravings by Théodore de Brie. But if anti-Habsburg propaganda was the basis of this distorted image, its persistence was due, even more importantly, to the lack of response to it in Spain itself. For by the time that the anti-Habsburg myths began to prevail, Spain, and those who wished to defend her interests, had become increasingly obsessed with the irksome question of decline. The soul-searching literature of those self-appointed analysts of the ills of the Spanish Habsburg monarchy, the arbitristas, hardly provided an answer to the negative polemics that became so dominant. It is important that we do not reduce the richly complex world of the conquistadores to a sweeping caricature. Our view of their many atrocities needs to be grounded in historical context. Their world was not the cruel, backward, obscurantist and bigoted myth of legend, but the late medieval crusading world, which saw the stamping out of the last vestiges of Muslim rule on continental Europe. In the wake of the capture of Granada and the expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 1492, Europeans were unexpectedly faced with the challenge, at first gradual but ultimately unavoidable, of having radically to redraw the map of the known world in order to accommodate a new reality. Not the quick path to the riches of the Indies, for which cash-strapped monarchs had hoped, but an astonishingly large and hitherto unknown continent. The venal and acquisitive ethos that such circumstances engendered should not be disassociated from the powerful spirit of humanist and religious reform that marked late medieval Spain. This was a world that saw no inherent contradiction in the attempt to establish forms of governance that were simultaneously high-minded and shamelessly lucrative. The frequent claim among the conquistadores to have gone to the Indies in order to serve God, the King, and to get rich, should evoke in our minds a disarming frankness, to use J.H. Eliot's apt remark, rather than a mere hypocritical pretext to hide base and immoral motives. My aim in writing this book has been to place the conquistadores in just such a context. The experiment has entailed the reconstruction